If you stayed there 5 years, the explanation is that for a long period of time the Liberals didn't want an election. This was the reason why. But the question was good. How can we work together? I'm telling you that the Bloc Québécois was never judging a proposal based on who made it. When it's good from the good proposal made by the NDP, the Liberals, or the Tory, if it's good, it's good. If it's not, it's not. And I do remember that Mr. Harper in 2004 was working like that. We met in a hotel room in Montreal, remember, Jack, at the Delta, and we changed all the rules of Parliament. We wrote a letter to Adrienne Clarkson. You wrote it. We signed it, saying that if Paul Martin was to lose confidence in the House, we said to the then Governor General Adrienne Clarkson, don't launch an election, consult us, we have other options. Obviously, the other options were what? Jack Layton with around 20 members as Prime Minister? Certainly not. Gilles Duceppe as Prime Minister of Canada? Certainly not, I'm sure of that. The only option was you. You finished second, and you wanted to be Prime Minister. Exactly what you've asked, exactly what you wrote, it's exactly what we signed, and you went to see and meet with Adrienne Clarkson to discuss that. And now you say, impossible to do so. I mean, you said something, you preached something, you wrote something, and you did something else.
Can I correct the facts? We signed a letter around some cooperation we did do in opposition, but we were all very clear. We were not going to form a coalition. All three of us said so in 2004. It's on the record. I was very clear. I was not going to defeat the government and try and replace the government that had won the election.
Well, that's not
However, in 2000, the reason Mr. Duceppe and Mr. Layton are changing their stories now is because later,
we're
in
reading
2008,
the letter, sir.
they tried to put in power the Liberal Party, which had lost the election. That's not how democracy is supposed to work in this country. Mr. Duceppe, I can understand why. I can understand why you would like a scenario where you can be the one who picks the government of Canada. But frankly, your party is
exactly
dedicated of this country. I will not accept that kind of mandate from you. This party will never accept that kind of mandate from you. So you can go seek it from Mr. Ignatieff and Mr. Layton. But I will never put the government of Canada beholden to a party.
This is just not true.
Mr. Duceppe, we've got to get the other two in. Mr. Layton and Mr. Ignatieff.
I was in those meetings, and you were ready to become the Prime Minister with the support of Mr. Duceppe and myself. I walked out because I wasn't ready to make you Prime Minister. Let's be crystal clear.
That's not what you said at the time,
That is precisely what we said at the time. Not at all. Not at all.
I mean, I'm the only one who say we did that, and I still say that we did so. I don't change my mind. Jack, you signed the letter as well as me, as well as Mr. Harper. And when you're saying there was other option than an election...
At the time, Mr. Duceppe, you said there was no possibility of a coalition between our three parties. You were clear about that publicly.
I'm not talking about coalition. I'm talking about the fact that the one who finished second could become the Prime Minister. Exactly what you signed. That was the option, sir.
I never signed any such declaration. I don't believe that. We have a tradition in this country. The party that finishes first forms the government. Parties
We've got to be fair with the time here. We've got to be fair with the time. Mr. Ignatieff, please.
Three leaders seem to have a problem with the coalition. I don't. I've made it clear the alternative to a Harper government is a Liberal government composed of Liberal members of Parliament bringing in a budget based on the Liberal platform that we'll be running for. They've got a problem with a coalition. Coalition's out for me. Let's be clear.
Well, Mr. Ignatieff, there you go, saying that the only alternative to Canadians is your party. That's the kind of arrogant self-aggrandizement that we're so used to from the Liberals. Oh. And really, it's the least attractive aspect of your party. Fact is that Canadians, here in Canada, Canadians decide who's going to be the Prime Minister. Not you and not your party.
Jack, I respect the voters too much to presume anything else, and I'm happy to work with you. I'm happy to work with Mr. Harper. I'm happy to work with Mr. Duceppe. I'm just saying, let's not do it as a coalition. Let's try and make Parliament work. I've got respect for your positions. I've got respect for your leadership. I'm just saying we're not going to go into a coalition. I'm just saying we're not going to go into a coalition.
Why did you support, let me just follow up on this. Why are you then, and have you been, Mr. Harper's best friend all these last 2.5 years, supporting his agenda, ratifying what he wants to do, time and time and time again? This is what I don't understand. In fact, if Mr. Harper, if it hadn't been for him supporting you all this time, I'd have to be lending him my crutch so that your government could have stayed in power. But this is the true story of Mr. Ignatieff and his party.
Well, let me just be very clear about our position. Of course, parties will work together from time to time. But our position is very clear. The party that wins the most seats forms the government. That's how our democracy is supposed to work. If we form a Conservative minority, I would be honored once again to govern Canadians. If we do not win the election, the Conservative Party will not govern this country. Mr. Ignatieff will not make that commitment. He will say that he will go and he's willing to accept a mandate from the other parties to govern. The party that wins the election has to govern. Otherwise, we will have a party dedicated to the breakup of the country, deciding who.
False. If you get more seats than any other party, you get to try and meet the House of Commons. If I get
Try.
Yeah, well, of course, you got to win the confidence of the House of Commons. If I get more seats, I'll try and win the confidence of the House of Commons, and I'll work with other parties, but a coalition's out.
But it's not
Accept the rules, those are the rules.
It's not a matter of trying, Mr. Ignatieff. If you don't win the most seats, you don't get to form the government. That's how our system works.
I just said that. I just accept that principle.
You said in your statement that the party that wins the most seats will get to try first. Then you think you'd all get together, vote against it, and replace the government. That's not how our system is supposed to work in this country. People expect that the party that wins the most seats forms the government. Otherwise, you will have a situation where small parties, including a party, the Bloc Québécois, dedicated to the breakup of the country, will decide which party goes into power. And I don't think that's good for this country.
Monsieur Duceppe.
Yes, but when you say that the party who finish with more seats form the government, you forgot something. That party have to have the confidence of the House with a speech from the throne, with a budget. If not, I mean, otherwise there's no democracy at all. And I ask you again, you wrote a letter saying, don't launch an election. There's other option than an election if Paul Martin was to lose confidence. What were those options?
Well,
obviously, another prime minister said there's no other option than that.
I was very clear. The Conservative Party was not going to try and form government when it had lost the election. That simply doesn't make any sense. We seek to get a mandate from the Canadian people. We didn't get it in 2004.
This is what you signed. This is what you
We got it in 2006, and we got it in 2008. And I hope we'll have it again. And I hope this time, I'm being quite frank, I hope it is a majority, because otherwise, you look at the debate we're having today, you can see we will be into a fifth election in no time at all. And I'm worried that, quite frankly, this country at some point, we're going to lose our focus on the economy, start raising taxes, start doing things that are not good for the long-run interests of the country just because of the short-run politics of a minority party.
That's what Mr. Harper's saying here. He's ready to accept that were he to get a majority, and I'm doing everything I can to stop it because I'd like to lead this country, despite what Mr. Ignatieff says. But he could possibly do it with significantly less than 50% of Canadians supporting him. That's undemocratic. We need to change our electoral system. There's something wrong with the system that when a party, the Bloc Québécois, we'll pick that example, has 1.3 million votes and gets 50 seats in the House. And we've got the Green Party that gets 900,000 votes, not that far behind the Bloc, they get 0 seats. It's time that we had proportional representation in this country so that we had a proper representation of everybody's point of view when it comes to that House of Commons. And by the way, while we're at it, let's stop the undemocratic Senate from doing what it does, and it should be abolished in our opinion, wasteful and expensive and a repository for political friends. Let's get rid of it and let's test the Canadian people on that one. Let's really fix what's wrong in Ottawa.
Let me address that question, because I understand.
Mr. Harper, hang on one sec. I got to be even with the time here. Mr. Ignatieff, you get to respond here.
The key issue is whether you can trust the